Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a fantastic day. So today, we're back in the garage and we're putting the drivetrain back in the KRX. So if you haven't followed along, well, I went to Moab and had a fantastic time. But while I was there, I developed a vibration, the clutch started shifting, and my front differential started to leak. So in the last video, I kind of looked over what was wrong, what wasn't wrong, and in between that video and this one, I've gone ahead and pulled the drivetrain and ordered parts, because I'm not one to just throw random parts at a vehicle hoping it fixes the issue. I'd rather fix the issue correctly the first time. So let me show you where I'm at real quick. So on the front end, I've gone ahead and I have pulled the front differential through the passenger side like I did previously. I had to go ahead and take off the Brutes heavy hitter kit, just this upper one. I've taken the yoke and the drive shaft off. So finally, after pulling the drive shaft and the two yokes out, I went ahead and I pulled the short shaft with the carrier bearing that bolts in right here. It's two 12mm bolts, and it goes all the way back down to the output shaft of the engine. So I was getting a vibration while driving down a road at certain speeds above 50 miles an hour. We were taking the long highways to get back to camp. Well, I figured it was the yoke, but it was more than the yoke, and let me show you. Here's the old yoke versus the new yoke. I got the rear and the fronts, and there's just the minute amounts of play in this universal joint or the U-joint. Not really going to cause anything. The problem is I think the splines are a little worn because the new yoke is a much tighter fit. So here is the old yoke, and you can see lots of play. Well, let me get the new yoke. And here's the new yoke. Just a little bit of play. Now, if you're asking, why is there still play with the new yoke? Well, it's actually the way the splines are cut on the turn and drive shaft versus the OEM. The splines on the turn and drive shaft are more of a point versus they're squared off on the OEM. If you look at the OEM, it is a much tighter fit, almost no movements. Now there is something else I noticed when I pulled the yoke from the drive shaft, which wouldn't affect anything, but I do have to replace it on the part, so I'll run up to the store and get it. And that's the bolt that holds the yoke onto the drive shaft. If you look, there's a little bit of wear on these splines right here. And if you look on the bolts, that's where it came from. The bolt was binding in there and eating into the splines. Now before you say something, if you rotate the bolt, there's more wear there, and that is from the OEM drive shaft. If you look right here on the OEM drive shaft, there's just a little bit of wear if the camera will focus. So after ordering the new yoke, I went ahead and ordered a carrier bearing from Brute Performance. I got the upgraded one. So if you look right down here, Brute Performance carrier bearing. It's a nice piece of solid aluminum. It's got an upgraded bearing in there. They give you a new snap ring. Now if you're wondering why I ordered a new bearing, well, let me show you. So here is the OEM carrier bearing. This is the side that goes into the yoke. You can see the groove of the bolts. This is the side that goes into the engine, and then there's your coupler with the dust cover type thing. So if you look, stay with the camera, there's some play in there, and I think that's where my vibration might have been coming from. If you look at the bottom, there's a lot more there. So hopefully I found the fix for the vibration. We'll put an upgraded part in there, get everything cleaned up and back together. So as for the clutch, I'm still waiting on clutch weights. Hopefully in the next week or two I'll have those in. And for the final fix for the driveline, well, that's the front differential that's leaking. And again, that was my fault. Let me show you. So here is the Turner input shaft that I put in the front differential. But if you look at the bottom, you can see down here where I'm having a seep. There's actually a leak right there. It's not coming from the big seal up here. So I think the O-ring that's in there, I went ahead and I pinched it. And right here, well, there's a new O-ring for it. Now I'm just down to reassembling the KRX, which probably take an hour, hour and a half. But there's a couple things I have to remember, and if you do this, you need to remember too, such as phasing the yokes. What does that mean? Well, let me show you. When I put this on the drive shaft, I want to make sure the yokes are the same. So if you turn this one, here's your rear one, here's your front one, you want to make sure everything is the same. See how it's lined up like this? You don't want it like this. It could cause it to be a little bit out of balance. So you want it as phased as you can. So what I'll do, since I'm putting two new yokes on there, I'll go ahead and phase it on the workbench, draw some lines with a paint pen, and then go ahead, take them off, install everything, and then phase it when it's in the machine. But having that paint pen there makes it much easier than trying to phase it, because the front yoke, well, it's kind of up under the dash, so it's really hard to see. First thing I'm going to do is take this off. Let's get this little circlip out of here. The brute kit comes with a new one. Still don't want to bust this one. If I can keep it in one piece. So now we got the circlip off. We're going to remove this oil seal. This is another one underneath it. The oil seal. Then as you can see, there's another circlip down there with the ball bearings. So now that we got that one out, this should just tap right out. Just like that. And if you look, it is burnt. This marring on there where this shaft was turning inside these bearings. I'll show you that. Look in the bearing. If I get the camera to show it, it is smoked. I mean, you can tell it was definitely spinning. I don't want to say the bearings are crunchy, but they're definitely shouldn't be rolling like this. So reassembling this is actually pretty easy. It's just reverse order. If you're using the brute kit, it's actually less parts. Let me show you what it is. So you got your very nice bearing here, which replaces that. If you notice, it's already got these seals installed, so you are not going to reuse that circlip there. I've gone ahead, I took a piece of emery cloth, try to get the burn marks off of there, and this will just slide right on into here. But what you're going to do is you're going to put your favorite thread locker. I'm using red, and we're going to put it right here so the bearing sits on there. When this dries and cures, this shaft won't spin inside the bearing. So like I said, reassembly is pretty easy. Now make sure when you do this, you orientate the mounting surface. So if you notice, my bolt holes are up, so the shaft will slide up like this. And then I will go ahead and I'll get my red Loctite to put on there. So I just put a liberal amount of my thread locker. I'll just slide this up. I put a towel on it just so I don't mar it up. And there we go. Spins freely. And then I will take the new circlip and just get that put on. So reinstalling the rear drive shaft is actually pretty easy. If you had to change carrier bearing out, know that you don't actually have to pull the whole drive shaft. You can just slide the front differential forward if you don't have a winch up there, or remove the winch, pull the differential forward, and then you can get to it. You don't have to pull all the front suspension like I did to pull the front differential. So I've gone ahead, I've greased that coupler, I've slid it back on the back side of the engine. I can't get the camera in over there anyways, but it's right down there. So next thing we'll do is I will take this stub shaft or short axle. Make sure that you have this O-ring on here and it is in good condition. So you can see I have the grease on there already. And I'm just going to thread this in through there. Now the bolts that go into right there, if you look right here, they are 18 foot-pounds. Now they got the rear drive shaft in, the next thing you can do is get your drive shaft and clock your yokes. So if you look, I know you can't really see it on there. I have a mark, and it's on there. I come over here, and I've clocked it. It's very hard to see. I can't find my paint pen. I've also put some heavy-duty grease on the splines, and then I went ahead and I have torqued this back bolt down right there. I still need to get a new one for this one, but I will go ahead and pre-grease these splines here, and I will send the drive shaft through. The last thing I have to do is fix the seal on the front differential. So I'm going to feed this through, get the differential fixed, and get the front suspension back together. As each drive shaft installed now, you do this differential. Should be pretty straightforward. Fluid's drained like I said, so let's go ahead and pull this off. If we look up the torque specs, we'll get this new O-ring in, so no more leaking front differential. All right, let's pull this off. Pry this open. Just be real gentle. And right there, if you look, there's my leak. Pinched O-ring. Nice and easy fix. Let's get this one out. Got our new O-ring here. I'm gonna put a little bit of petroleum jelly on there so that it doesn't move. And we will just very carefully slide this back on, not to damage that new O-ring. Just like that, it's on. I will go ahead and look up the torque specs, put these back on. Definitely not running this back in with an impact driver. And then we will reassemble this, connect it to the drive shaft, fill it with fluid. I'll be done for the day. Well, I'm back. It's actually the next day. You know that 90-minute job that turns into like 3 hours, 4 hours? Well, that's what this one has done. I was having an issue. I got the front differential in, but I couldn't get the input shaft or the spline stub on the differential to line up with the yoke for some reason. And it was just one of those ones where I was getting frustrated. I was running out of time, so I just walked away. I'm glad I did. Came out here. It's next morning. I ended up jacking the rear of the KRX up, putting it in neutral so I could just twist the drive shaft just a little bit. And 3 minutes later, it's back together. I've got all the bolts hand started. So the bolts on the bottom are hand started down there. I have the bolts up on the A-arms because I had to take the heavy hitter bracket out. Now these bolts here, you will not tighten until you get it on the ground. I need to look up the torque specs to put those bolts back on because this aluminum housing, you definitely don't want to over torque that. So from here, it's pretty easy. It's just a matter of getting the rest of the front suspension together, which won't take too long. I'll put some cotter pins in, torque all the bolts down, get it on the ground so I can torque those upper A-arms, put some fresh fluid in this front differential, and take it for a drive. See if that vibration is gone. I'm pretty sure it is, but I'm gonna do the whole fancy YouTube thing and try to snap my fingers and see if it goes back together. And just like that, everything is back together. Pretty simple process. Took about 30 minutes to get everything back together, fluids filled, torqued down. It's my second or third time doing it. It's not too big of a deal. Really excited. I am about 2 weeks out for my new clutch weights. If you aren't familiar with the previous video, they are just pretty grooved. I don't want to throw these back in there because by doing that, there's a possibility of grooving the sheaves. So I'll just hang out for another week or two. So what does that mean for me? Well, next week we're going to be installing a new product. I had a vendor reach out to me, send me something. It is right here. So there is your hints of what it is. Super excited to get this on, test it out. I will probably borrow a set of clutch weights from a buddy and we will take it down the road and see how it does and confirm that that vibration is gone. So I hope you liked the video. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and until next time.